So my logic is going to be like all opportunities created in a day by a user should not exceed 100,000. All right. So in a total, let's say that's what my logic is. In a total, all the opportunities that a user creates in a day, sum total of all those opportunities, sum of the amount of all those opportunities should not exceed 100,000. That's what my logic is. What do I do here? This is something where you need to take the existing records also into consideration. You cannot just work with the record in context, right? Because it should check the existing records, the ones which have been already created by that user today, on today's date, and then it should go ahead and do the sum of those and then return you the value, based on, let's say, uh, if the sum is exceeding 100,000, it should throw you an error, right? So in this, what we're going to do, we'll create an apex class, okay, and we'll create a method in the class. We will call the method in trigger. So instead of writing the code or the code logic directly in trigger, this time I'm going to write the logic in a method in the class and use it in trigger. I can do it the other way around also, but since we have done examples of writing the code logic directly in trigger, let's do this example by writing it in an apex class. All right. So it's pretty simple. You just need to go to Salesforce, develop Apex classes. So you also, in this example, you also get to learn how, an Apex class can be created, and a method from an Apex class can be referenced in a um, trigger. All right. So just go ahead and click on new. Public class trigger class. Give it whatever name you want. And then you put it like this. Okay. Uh, so create a method inside this. Call it trigger method, whatever again. For this method, this void method, I would define a parameter which can be a list of opportunities. Call it ops. All right. This parameter I've defined because this is gonna act for the trigger.new when I call this method on the trigger. All right. So in there, I will say trigger.new equals ops. That's what we are going to do, right? So instead of this parameter, we are going to use trigger.new, right? This is the parameter which I'm going to use in this. Now, for this, functionality to work, I have to do two things. One, I have to check all the existing records which have been created by that user on the same date, which have already been created, all right, and do a sum of all those records. My logic is that on a given day, a user, all opportunities created by a user, sum of the amount of all those opportunities should not exceed 100,000, right? Now for this, first of all, I'll have to check all the existing records, and then I'll have to check the records which are being created right now, okay, in the context. So all that you have to do is you just have to go ahead, go here and click on public void trigger method. Okay. and then you put it like this. For opportunity O1 in select amount from opportunity where created date equals today and created by ID equals user info dot user ID. Right. So I'm basically trying to run a for loop on all the records where the created date is today's date, all the opportunities which have been created today, and where the created by user is the same user as the one who is creating this opportunity, current opportunity, right? So for this, in this for loop, what I want to do is let's say I have a double called total amount. Total amount equals 0. Now I want to add up the value to the total amount. So I say total amount equals total amount plus O1 dot amount, right? So this for loop will run and it will keep on adding the values to the total amount. So all those records will come into this for loop, and end of this loop I will get the sum total in the total amount variable, right? This is one part of it. So this for loop will do the check in all the existing records, all the records which have been created today, all right, and it will do a sum of those created today by the same user. It will do a sum of those. Second for loop is for the records in context. So for records in context, trigger.new, I have used a variable here, ops, because I cannot say trigger.new here. So what I'll have to do is I just have to define a parameter here, which I'm going to use here, and there I'll replace it with trigger.new. So for those records, you again run a for loop for opportunity O2 within ops. I would again do the same thing. This time it should be O2 dot amount. So this trigger will again run here. All right. But there's one more thing that I want to do here. If any point of time the total amount is greater than 100,000, then O2 dot add error. You have exceeded your daily limit. All right. User info dot get user ID. No. Okay. I'll just give you the exact thing here. All right. So user info dot get user ID will return the user ID of the current user. All right. So it will go and check if the current user has created any opportunities already today on today's date. So it checks all the opportunities which have been created today and by the same user, and it sums it up to the total amount, right? So all existing opportunities sum will be done in the first for loop. Then it gets into the second for loop. In the second for loop, it checks this set of opportunities, okay, which this is the trigger.new, which I'm gonna assign to trigger.new, right? So it will check trigger.new records, right? Now, in the previous example, if you remember, we were doing just this part. If you compare it to the previous example, we were doing just this part. We were not doing this, right? We were just doing this much from here, right? This is what we were doing. Here I did trigger.new and rest it was completely like this. Now, because here the requirement is like that you also need to check the records already existing in the database, you will have to put one more for loop here, right? So this is how it is done. It's here, and that's it. So my class is done. I save the class. All that I have to do is now I have to call this class and method on the trigger, right? So just go ahead, click a trigger on the opportunity. But before you leave this class, just take the class name. This is your class name and the method name. Dot this, and there is this parameter inside it, OPS. So instead of OPS in the trigger, I will replace that with a trigger dot new. That's it. So all that I have to do is I just have to go to opportunities, fields. No, not fields. Sorry, opportunities, triggers. Uh, Create a new trigger. Give it a trigger name T2 before insert. All right. And you don't have to write the code, you just have to call the class and method here. So class name dot method name, that's how you call a method from a class. And in the parameter I'm supplying trigger dot new. That's it. One minute. This method does not exist. All right. Event, same way, the way we did yesterday. Uh, and this is what we have to do, trigger dot new. That's it. Now if you try to create opportunities, let's say if you create one opportunity of 25 and you put an amount which is like 50,000, some close date, stage, save it. Right. Then if we say, so 50,000 got created. I try to create one more, same date, same user, of 26, 40,000. So that also gets created because total 50 and 40 is 90,000. Now if I try to create another one and try to put 20,000 here, this is what will throw error. You have exceeded your daily limit. So it says you already exceeded your daily limit. This is where the error is. Alright, clear on the logic part?
Yes.
Please let me know if you have any question or doubt here.
Can you please explain me about the linking from one class to other trigger, Apex especially, the linking.
See, the class is there, you have written the class and you have written a method there. Alright. All that you have to do is
Okay.
while you want to call the code from the class on a trigger, the trigger syntax and everything is there, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
trigger T1 on whatever object, let's say opportunity in this case, before insert event and all. So these things so you will write, right? The way we were calling a class or method on Visual Force page. So we had a particular way of calling it with the help of a
Okay.
controller, right? For a trigger, all these things are there. All that you have to do is you just have to call it like this: class name dot method name, and
Okay.
here you will put trigger dot new. All right. So the method that you want to call for a trigger always have to have a parameter, which is a
Okay.
parameter of a list variable, right?
Okay.
So that parameter we define there so that we can assign that value to this. Because on my method I cannot call trigger dot new, right? So what I do is instead of trigger dot new, I define a variable there, a list variable. All right, list as object, and then I replace it here with trigger dot new.
Okay.
Got the logic? So basically, it's like in my method, I created a space holder for it, created a variable for it, and here I, put trigger.new into that space holder, into that variable.
Oh, okay.
Because trigger.new is a context variable which is understood only in trigger. You cannot call it on a class or method, right? So in that method, define an S object, keep the space, and here replace it with trigger.new while you call it. So that's what you have to do. You just have to say the class name dot method name, and within brackets just put trigger.new. This is how it needs to be. So that's what we did in our example. Class name was trigger class,
Yeah.
method name was trigger method, and inside
Okay.
this we
Like
did
that. Okay.
trigger.new. Got the logic?
Okay. Ji.
Yeah. Uh, and did you get the logic behind the code that we did? We have written.
Yes, ji.
All right. Let me do this thing. The code is written in the class, right? Here is the class. Can you just give me 1 minute? I'll put it in charge.
Yeah. Okay. Ji.
Yeah. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna send you this code, right?